If you love your husband with your whole heart, but one day discover he has another life behind your back, then you will understand exactly how I felt on that fateful afternoon. My name is Emma Clarke, 31 years old, and I run a small bakery in West London, and this is the story of the first time in my marriage I felt like an outsider looking in on my own life. It was our 3rd wedding anniversary. I had brought Daniel a box of his favourite lemon tarts, still warm because I had taken them straight from the oven. London was cold that day, but hope kept me warm. The simple hope that no matter how busy or overwhelmed he was, he would smile when he saw me standing there unexpectedly. But life has its own way of reminding you that innocence is often the thing that hurts the most. When I placed the box on the reception counter, my eyes drifted to Daniel's tablet, the one he had forgotten there before heading into an internal meeting. The screen lit up with a message, brief and sharp as a blade. "Thank you for last night. V.H. V.H. Victoria Hayes, my husband's ex-wife." I barely had a moment to breathe when the receptionist, as casually as if she were talking about the weather, asked me, "Are you here for Mrs. Hayes? She's just gone up to see Mr. Clarke." Mrs. Hayes? In that moment, the ground beneath my feet seemed to stretch away, as if some invisible space had opened beneath my ribs. The lift chimed softly, and then she appeared, calm, elegant, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged here far more than I ever had. Some marriages fall apart in shouting and chaos. Mine began to crack open with a receptionist's smile, a 6-word message, and the return of the woman I thought was long gone from our lives. Before I tell you what happened next, before the silent corridors, the hotel booking I overheard, the mysterious business trip, and the little girl who looked so uncannily like her, stay with me. Because what I discovered afterwards almost destroyed the marriage I believed was unbreakable. If the message on Daniel's tablet was the first cut, then what I heard in that corridor was the moment everything sharpened. I walked up to the project floor to find him. I was still convincing myself that there had to be a reasonable explanation. Work, stress, bad timing, anything but the alternative. But fate has a habit of choosing the exact moment you are trying to stay calm to place a knife right into your hands. As I passed the accounting office, I heard a staff member speaking on the phone, not clearly, not loudly, but just enough for certain words to slip through the gap in the door. "The booking for Manchester? Mr. Clarke? And Mrs. Hayes. Check-in Tuesday? Check-out Wednesday? 1 room? Or 2? Sorry, the line is bad. My feet stopped moving. I could not see the speaker, and I could not hear more. The rest of the sentence blurred into papers rustling, fingers typing, chairs scraping. But I had heard enough. Daniel had gone to Manchester last week. He said it was a quick trip with the survey team. He did not mention Victoria. He did not mention any Hayes. He did not mention hotel rooms. My heart sank so fast it felt physical, as if the floor had dropped under me. I stepped back from the doorway, afraid they might see me, afraid I might hear one more word that would shatter something I wasn't prepared to lose. The lift doors opened at the end of the corridor, and familiar laughter echoed down the hallway, a voice I recognized far too well. Victoria. She was walking beside Daniel, holding a rolled-up blueprint, talking softly in that poised, calm way of hers, as if the world bent quietly around her. Daniel laughed at something she said, not loud, just a small sound. But a sound I hadn't heard from him in weeks. My stomach twisted. I forced myself to walk forward. I had come here. I could not hide. When Daniel saw me standing there, his expression froze for a split second, the same startled look as the day before. "Emma? What are you doing here?" He sounded worried. Not pleased. Not relieved. Worried. I lifted the box of lemon tarts again, my voice painfully steady. "I wanted to see you." Victoria offered a polite, unreadable smile. "Hello again, Emma." She said my name so gently, as if she were placing it back into my hands after removing it from somewhere it didn't belong. Daniel glanced at her, then at me. His throat tightened visibly. "We were just on our way to a meeting. It hurt more than I care to admit." "That's fine," I said. "I won't keep you." But even as I spoke, my ears replayed the half-heard words. Booking for Manchester. Mr. Clarke. Mrs. Hayes. Mrs. Hayes. Why was she travelling with him? Why had he not told me? Why did the booking sound like it involved just the two of them? And why? Why on earth had he hidden everything? Emma, Daniel said softly, we can talk at home, all right? It was not reassurance. It was a request. A plea. A warning. I nodded. What else could I do? As they walked away, Victoria glanced over her shoulder, not unkindly, but with the slightest confusion, as if she could sense a storm building that she did not understand her part in. I waited until they turned the corner, then pressed a hand against the wall, steadying myself. The day before, I had thought the worst thing was a message. Now, there was a hotel booking, a trip he had not mentioned. A woman who used to share his last name walking comfortably beside him while I was left piecing together half-heard sentences in a corridor. I took the lift down to the ground floor, the box of tarts still untouched in my hands. Outside, London moved like normal buses, chatter, traffic lights, as if my marriage wasn't quietly cracking open inside a concrete building. Back at the bakery, I tried to work, serve customers, decorate cupcakes, smile. But every time I blinked, the same questions returned. Why Manchester? Why her? Why with him? And why had he taken that trip as if it were nothing, as if I didn't deserve to know who he was sharing a hotel floor with? By late afternoon, I had convinced myself to breathe, to wait, to let him explain. But life, once again, did not wait for me to be ready. The next morning, before Daniel could say a word, before I could ask a single question, a little girl in a red coat walked into my bakery. And nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be simple again. If the day before had cracked something inside me, then the sight of that little girl in my bakery was the moment the crack split all the way through. She stood there in her red coat, curly dark hair framing her small face, a toy rabbit tucked under one arm. Her eyes were wide, careful, as though she was stepping into a story she did not fully understand. And the worst part was this. She looked unmistakably like Victoria. Not Daniel. Not me. Not anyone in my world. Her resemblance to Victoria was so uncanny that for a terrifying second I thought I was looking at her daughter. Before I could find my voice, she held up a folded note with both hands. Her fingers trembled. My mum said to give this to you. I took the note. My hands were colder than the marble counter beneath them. Inside, written in neat, slanted handwriting, was a single sentence. Please help Lily find Daniel. We need him urgently. Lily. The name hit me like something physical. I crouched down, tried to make my voice gentler than the storm inside me. Sweetheart, where is your mum? She pointed to the pavement outside. She is waiting. She told me not to be a bother. Through the window I saw her. A woman sitting on the bench near the bus stop, wrapped in a long coat, pale and unsteady. She looked nothing like Victoria, and only then did I realize the truth. She was older, frail. Her expression carried the exhaustion of someone who had been fighting too many battles alone. This must be the sister, the one no one mentioned, the one I did not even know existed. I stepped out from behind the counter. Come with me, Lily. Let's go to your mum. She took my hand without hesitation. Her little fingers were warm against my cold ones. When we reached the bench, the woman looked up and attempted a smile. You must be Emma. I am sorry to bother you. Her voice faltered, thin and tired like paper close to tearing. Are you Victoria's sister? I asked quietly. She nodded. My name is Amelia Hayes, but please call me Mia. I have been unwell for some time. Victoria usually picks Lily up from nursery, but she had a site meeting today. She said Daniel might be nearby, and Lily insisted on coming here. The words tangled around me. So the child was not Victoria's daughter. She was her niece. Why did she look so much like her? Same eyes, same chin, same softness in her expression. A wave of relief and confusion washed through me in equal measure. I looked at Mia properly. Her lips were slightly blue, her breathing uneven. A sheen of fever glazed her forehead. You are not well, I said. I know. But I did not want to alarm Victoria. She already has too much on her plate. I thought maybe Daniel. She hesitated. A painful pause. Daniel. He helps us sometimes. The ache in my stomach twisted tighter. Helps you? How? Not financially, she added quickly, almost frightened I would assume the worst. He drives Lily to doctor appointments when Victoria cannot leave work. He waits with her. He is patient, gentle. Lily adores him. Every word slid deeper under my skin, each one both a balm and a blade. Mia reached for her daughter, but her hand shook too much. I instinctively held Lily steady. Can I call someone for you? I asked. An ambulance? Victoria? No, no ambulance. They keep me there for hours. I only need to rest. And Lily needs lunch. In that moment, every suspicion I had about Daniel, every jealousy, every fear twisted into something else entirely. Shame. Because here, in front of me, was a woman who truly needed help, not a threat, not a secret lover, just someone drowning quietly at the edges of everyone's lives. Let me get you both inside. You can sit in the office. Mia nodded gratefully. I brought them into the bakery's back room, sat her down with a blanket around her shoulders, made tea, gave Lily a warm croissant. But beneath all of that, my mind kept circling back to one truth I could not deny. Daniel had been helping them. Often. Enough for Lily to know him well. Enough for Victoria to rely on him. And he had not told me any of it. When Mia finished her tea, she pulled a little envelope from her coat. I was supposed to give this to Daniel, she whispered. Could you? She looked embarrassed, almost ashamed. I took it gently. Of course. She tried to rise but swayed. I steadied her. Please, stay here until you feel stronger. I will call Victoria. No, not yet. She worries too much. Let me rest a moment. While Lily drew pictures with crayons I kept in the office, I slipped outside, the envelope heavy in my hand. Inside was a scanned hospital appointment, a list of medications, and a handwritten note from Mia. Thank you, Daniel, for arranging the site visit around my schedule. I know you did not have to. It means more than I can say. I pressed my back against the cold brick wall of my bakery, the wind slicing down the street. Daniel had arranged work schedules for them. He had coordinated around doctor visits. He had protected a woman who was barely holding herself together. I looked through the window. Mia sat hunched, her daughter curled against her side. This was not the story I had imagined. It was not the affair I feared. It was something far more complicated, far more human. But it did not erase the questions. Why had he hidden all of this? Why had he let me believe Victoria was simply a footnote in his past, when in reality she was tangled into his present? And why, above all else, had he not trusted me with the truth? I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, the air sharp in my lungs. I had thought the worst thing was Victoria returning. I was wrong. The worst thing was realizing my husband lived a whole second life. Not romantic, not scandalous, but built on secrets he did not share with me. Secrets that left me standing on the outside, watching him care for a family I had never even met. Before I tell you what happened when I confronted him that evening, before the hotel misunderstanding deepened, before another message appeared where it should not have been, stay with me. Because what I learnt next changed everything I thought I understood about betrayal. If finding Lily in my bakery had shaken me, then that evening was the moment everything inside me finally began to split. I got home before Daniel. The house felt too quiet, the sort of quiet that makes every shadow look wrong, every familiar object feel like a stranger. I kept replaying the day, the hotel booking I only half heard, the way Daniel laughed with Victoria, the handwritten note from Mia, the child who adored my husband as though he belonged to her world. By the time I heard Daniel's keys in the lock, my pulse was so loud I could hardly hear anything else. He stepped inside, tired, loosening his tie. But when his eyes found mine, his expression tightened. Emma, you're home early. And that was it. Not a hug, not a smile, not a question about my day, just a wary observation. I swallowed. We need to talk. He froze very slightly. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me. What's wrong? I didn't know where to begin. With the hotel, with Victoria, with Lily and her mother, with the fact that he had lived an entire chapter of his life that I had only just stumbled into by accident. I had a strange day. I started slowly. A little girl came into the bakery. Her name is Lily. Daniel's reaction was instant. His eyebrows lifted, his breath caught, his face changed shape. He did not hide it well. "Oh, Lily came to you. Is she all right?" He sounded genuinely worried, and that, somehow, made it worse. "Yes," I said. "She's fine. But her mum, Mia, she was unwell." Daniel's shoulders eased a little at the names, as though the mystery was finally forming into something he recognized. He sat down heavily on the sofa. "Emma, I'm glad you helped them. I really am." There was something in his tone, gratitude, relief, guilt, but not honesty. "Daniel," I said quietly, "why didn't you tell me anything?" He closed his eyes as though the question hurt. "Because it wasn't important. Not important." The words dropped into the space between us like stones. "She is your ex-wife's sister," I said, "and her daughter knows you better than I knew." "That is not fair," he replied quickly. "It is not like that, Emma. Then what is it like? Please, explain it to me." He rubbed his forehead. "It is complicated. I did not want to worry you, but you worried me more by hiding it." He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Mia has been ill for months. Victoria has been juggling work and childcare. I helped when I could. That's all." "That's all?" I asked softly. "A child walked into my bakery asking for you. A woman I've never met wrote your name, like you were the only person she trusted. And all this time, you've been scheduling work around her treatments." Daniel didn't deny it. He simply said, "They needed someone. So why couldn't that someone be me too?" I whispered. "Why was I never allowed to know?" He looked up sharply. "That's not fair. Emma, you're emotional right now." The worst part was that he meant it gently, as if he was soothing a child, as if my reaction was the problem, not the secrecy. "I'm emotional," I said, "because I overheard something at your office today." His entire body stilled. "What did you hear?" I hesitated. The words felt fragile in my mouth. I heard someone saying, "A booking in Manchester. For Mr. Clarke and Mrs. Hayes. Check in Tuesday. Check out Wednesday." Daniel inhaled sharply, and for a moment the world felt suspended. "That wasn't what it sounded like," he said quickly. "It was a work trip, a survey. There was a whole team. But that's not what they said. The staff must have shortened the names," he insisted. "Emma, I swear to you, I had my own room. Victoria had hers. It was professional. Yet he had not told me. Not before the trip, not after it, not when he came home tired with a story that felt rehearsed." I stared at him. "Daniel, did you lie to me?" He exhaled. Not angrily, not defensively, but in quiet defeat. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. That is what lying is." He shook his head. "No, I was trying to protect you." "Protect me from what?" I demanded. "The truth?" Silence spread between us again, heavy as wet concrete. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked for the first time. "Emma, I didn't want you to feel insecure. Victoria and I work well together. You know how these things look from the outside." "Yes," I said bitterly. "I know exactly how it looks." He reached for my hand. "Emma, there is nothing romantic there. Nothing. We finished years ago." I didn't pull my hand away, but I didn't close my fingers around his either. "You should have trusted me," I said. "You should have told me the truth." "I know," he whispered, "and I'm sorry." I wanted to believe him. I wanted his apology to fill the hollow ache in my chest, but my mind kept echoing the same unbearable thought. If I hadn't walked into that building today, if Lily hadn't come into my bakery, if Mia hadn't handed me that envelope, would he ever have told me at all? Daniel looked at me for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Emma, there's something else you should know. Victoria received a message today, something that might complicate things." A cold shiver ran down my back. "What message?" He hesitated. "That's what I need to talk to you about, but not tonight. It's too much for one evening. Let's just breathe, all right?" No, nothing felt all right. Before I could ask another question, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen, and his face changed again. Another message, another name, another truth I was not meant to see. "Who is that?" I asked. Daniel pressed his lips together. "It's nothing urgent." But I had already seen the preview on the screen. A name I recognized, Victoria. And underneath it, a message that made my throat close. "Call me when you can. We need to decide how to handle this." "Handle what?" My voice shook. "Daniel, what is going on?" He didn't answer. Not then. Not when I asked again. Not when I followed him into the kitchen demanding the truth. All he said was, "Emma, please, not tonight. Before I tell you what happened the next morning, before the truth finally clawed its way out, before I learned what he and Victoria were handling together, stay with me. Because the next part of the story is where everything truly breaks." If finding Lily in my bakery had shaken me, then that evening was the moment everything inside me finally began to split. I got home before Daniel. The house felt too quiet, the sort of quiet that makes every shadow look wrong, every familiar object feel like a stranger. I kept replaying the day. The hotel booking I only half heard, the way Daniel laughed with Victoria, the handwritten note from Mia, the child who adored my husband as though he belonged to her world. By the time I heard Daniel's keys in the lock, my pulse was so loud I could hardly hear anything else. He stepped inside, tired, loosening his tie. But when his eyes found mine, his expression tightened. "Emma, you're home early," and that was it. Not a hug, not a smile, not a question about my day, just a wary observation. I swallowed. "We need to talk." He froze, very slightly. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me. "What's wrong?" I didn't know where to begin. With the hotel? With Victoria? With Lily and her mother? With the fact that he had lived an entire chapter of his life that I had only just stumbled into by accident? I had a strange day, I started slowly. A little girl came into the bakery. Her name is Lily. Daniel's reaction was instant. His eyebrows lifted, his breath caught, his face changed shape. He did not hide it well. "Oh, Lily came to you? Is she all right?" He sounded genuinely worried, and that somehow made it worse. "Yes," I said. "She's fine. But her mum, Mia, she was unwell." Daniel's shoulders eased a little at the names, as though the mystery was finally forming into something he recognized. He sat down heavily on the sofa. "Emma, I'm glad you helped them. I really am." There was something in his tone, gratitude, relief, guilt, but not honesty. "Daniel," I said quietly, "why didn't you tell me anything?" He closed his eyes as though the question hurt. "Because it wasn't important. Not important." The words dropped into the space between us like stones. "She is your ex-wife's sister," I said, "and her daughter knows you better than I knew." "That is not fair," he replied quickly. "It is not like that, Emma." "Then what is it like? Please, explain it to me." He rubbed his forehead. "It is complicated. I did not want to worry you, but you worried me more by hiding it." He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Mia has been ill for months. Victoria has been juggling work and childcare. I helped when I could. That's all." "That's all?" I asked softly. "A child walked into my bakery asking for you. A woman I've never met wrote your name like you were the only person she trusted. And all this time, you've been scheduling work around her treatments." Daniel didn't deny it. He simply said, "They needed someone. So why couldn't that someone be me too?" I whispered. Why was I never allowed to know? He looked up sharply. That's not fair. Emma, you're emotional right now. The worst part was that he meant it gently, as if he was soothing a child, as if my reaction was the problem, not the secrecy. I'm emotional, I said, because I overheard something at your office today. His entire body stilled. What did you hear? I hesitated. The words felt fragile in my mouth. I heard someone saying, a booking in Manchester, for Mr. Clarke and Mrs. Hayes. Check in Tuesday. Check out Wednesday. Daniel inhaled sharply, and for a moment the world felt suspended. That wasn't what it sounded like, he said quickly. It was a work trip. A survey. There was a whole team, but that's not what they said. The staff must have shortened the names, he insisted. Emma, I swear to you, I had my own room. Victoria had hers. It was professional. Yet he had not told me. Not before the trip, not after it. Not when he came home tired with a story that felt rehearsed. I stared at him. Daniel, did you lie to me? He exhaled. Not angrily, not defensively, but in quiet defeat. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. That is what lying is. He shook his head. No, I was trying to protect you. Protect me from what? I demanded. The truth? Silence spread between us again, heavy as wet concrete. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked for the first time. Emma, I didn't want you to feel insecure. Victoria and I work well together. You know how these things look from the outside. Yes, I said bitterly. I know exactly how it looks. He reached for my hand. Emma, there is nothing romantic there. Nothing. We finished years ago. I didn't pull my hand away, but I didn't close my fingers around his either. You should have trusted me, I said. You should have told me the truth. I know, he whispered. And I'm sorry. I wanted to believe him. I wanted his apology to fill the hollow ache in my chest. But my mind kept echoing the same unbearable thought. If I hadn't walked into that building today, if Lily hadn't come into my bakery, if Mia hadn't handed me that envelope, would he ever have told me at all? Daniel looked at me for a long moment. Then he said quietly, Emma, there's something else you should know. Victoria received a message today. Something that might complicate things. A cold shiver ran down my back. What message? He hesitated. That's what I need to talk to you about, but not tonight. It's too much for one evening. Let's just breathe, all right? No, nothing felt all right. Before I could ask another question, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen, and his face changed again. Another message, another name, another truth I was not meant to see. Who is that? I asked. Daniel pressed his lips together. It's nothing urgent. But I had already seen the preview on the screen. A name I recognized. Victoria. And underneath it, a message that made my throat close. Call me when you can. We need to decide how to handle this. Handle what? My voice shook. Daniel, what is going on? He didn't answer. Not then. Not when I asked again. Not when I followed him into the kitchen demanding the truth. All he said was, Emma, please, not tonight. Before I tell you what happened the next morning, before the truth finally clawed its way out, before I learned what he and Victoria were handling together, stay with me, because the next part of the story is where everything truly breaks. The next morning, I woke with a heaviness in my chest that felt almost physical, as if the air itself had thickened overnight. Daniel was already up. I could hear the kettle, the soft clatter of a mug on the counter, the quiet domestic noises of a house that should have felt like home but suddenly didn't. When I walked into the kitchen, he turned slightly, but his smile was small, strained, apologetic. One of those smiles meant to soothe a wound, not heal it. Morning, he said. I nodded. The word lodged in my throat. Emma. About last night, he began carefully. I know it sounded worse than it is. Worse than it is, I repeated in my head. A hotel booking, a former wife, a sick sister, a child who trusted him more than I understood. It was all already worse than I had imagined. But I kept my voice level. You said Victoria received a message, something we needed to handle. Daniel set his mug down, took a slow breath. Yes, but I want to explain it properly, not rushed. Then explain it now. He rubbed his temple. Before I do, I need to say something first. I folded my arms without meaning to. It was the only way to hold myself together. Emma, he said softly. I know I should have told you about Mia. And Lily. And working with Victoria again. And Manchester, I added. He hesitated, just enough for panic to pulse inside me. Yes, and Manchester. I should have told you. Why didn't you? He looked at me, and for a moment the mask slipped. He looked tired, older than yesterday, as if the weight of his secrets had finally become too heavy. Because, he said quietly, every time you see Victoria, you tense up. You think you hide it, but I notice. And I didn't want to feed that insecurity. My breath caught. So instead of being honest, you made the insecurity real. Emma, that's not fair. Fair, I whispered. What about this situation feels fair to me? He opened his mouth, closed it, then said, I was trying to protect our marriage, not break it. The irony wrapped itself around me like barbed wire. Before I could respond, his phone rang on the counter. He reached for it automatically, then paused when he saw the name. Victoria. He silenced the call. Something inside me tightened again. Daniel, I said quietly, if you don't answer, Shell just call back. As if on cue, the phone buzzed again. A message preview lit up the screen. Call me. It's urgent. My heartbeat quickened. What is urgent? I asked. Daniel swallowed. Emma, it's about Mia. The room shifted. My anger stumbled. Fear crept in. What about her? Her condition is worse than she lets on, he said. She collapses more often now. Victoria is struggling. They're both trying to keep it together. Yesterday, the message she sent me. It wasn't about us. It was about Mia. I sank slowly into the dining chair. Why didn't you just tell me that last night? Because you were already overwhelmed. You were hurting. I didn't want to add more. So instead you left me imagining the worst. He didn't deny it. He just stared at the table, ashamed. Then he said quietly, There's more. Those two words felt like a trapdoor opening beneath me. What more? Victoria was contacted by the site manager yesterday. There were questions about why she altered her schedule last month. She changed multiple project deadlines to match Mia's hospital appointments. So? My voice was thin. So, he said, they think she broke policy. And as her former husband, and someone who has stepped in to help Mia, I'm involved whether I want to be or not. I blinked. So, the message was about work? Yes. And about Mia's health deteriorating. Emma, none of this is what you think. I'm not hiding an affair. I'm trying to keep a family from falling apart. Family. The word hit harder than it should have. Daniel, I whispered. You say you want to protect that family, but what about ours? He finally looked at me fully. I'm trying to protect you too. By excluding me from everything that matters? He flinched. I stood up, unable to contain the pressure in my chest. Every emotion collided inside me. Hurt, confusion, guilt, love, fear, and something that felt dangerously like resentment. I met your life yesterday, Daniel, I said. A whole life I didn't know existed. A child, a sick woman, a responsibility, a past, all walking around with your name woven into theirs. It's not like that, he whispered. Then what is it like? My voice cracked, because I feel like a stranger in your story. He took a step toward me. Emma, please, let me make this right. How? I asked. By telling me half the truth today and another half tomorrow? By deciding which parts of your life I'm allowed to see? Daniel's shoulders sagged. I'm trying. I'm doing my best. I shook my head. Your best shouldn't erase me from the picture. Silence settled again, thick and suffocating. Then, a knock at the door. 3 small, polite taps. Daniel's eyes widened in alarm. Who is that? I didn't answer. My steps felt automatic as I walked to the hallway, heart pounding with a sense that whatever waited on the other side was about to make everything worse. When I opened the door, my breath froze. Victoria stood there, her hair pulled back, her coat still damp from the morning mist, her eyes wide with worry rather than hostility. Emma, she said, breathless. I'm sorry to come unannounced, but I need to speak with Daniel. It's important. Daniel appeared behind me. Victoria? What happened? Her voice trembled. It's Mia. She collapsed again. The ambulance took her 10 minutes ago. They're taking her to St. George's. And Lily's with me. She's frightened. I didn't know who else to call. Daniel grabbed his coat instantly. I'm coming. And then, the moment that sealed the fracture inside me. Victoria looked at me, genuinely apologetic, and said, I promise you, Emma, none of this is what you think. But her reassurance didn't comfort me. If anything, it hollowed something deeper. Because nothing about this situation was simple, nothing about it was innocent, and nothing about it was mine to control. Before leaving, Daniel turned back to me. Emma, please. We'll talk tonight, I promise. And then he was out the door, running down the steps, disappearing into a crisis I hadn't known existed until yesterday. I stood frozen in the doorway. Mia was in the hospital. Lily was terrified. Victoria needed him. And I was left behind again. Before I tell you what happened at Street, Georges, before the truth about Mia finally came out, before I learned what Daniel had been carrying alone for months, stay with me. Because the next revelation did not just shake my marriage, it shook everything I believed about myself. I arrived at St. George's almost an hour after Daniel left. I don't even remember the train ride. All I remember is the feeling that my ribs had been loosened, that something inside me was rattling with every breath. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and rain-soaked coats. People moved in hurried lines, staff calling instructions, families whispering fears they didn't want the walls to hear. And then I saw him. Daniel was standing at the far end of the corridor, leaning against a wall with his head bowed. His posture alone told me everything. He wasn't just worried. He was breaking. Victoria stood beside him, coat still damp, arms crossed tightly, her face pale in a way I had never seen. I approached slowly, as if afraid the floor might crack. Daniel lifted his head when he heard my steps. Emma, he said, startled. What are you doing here? The question stung more than he intended. Shouldn't a wife be here? Shouldn't I have known to come? Before I could respond, Victoria spoke first. I'm glad you're here, Emma. Truly. Mia asked for both of you. The words tightened something in my throat. How is she? I asked. Victoria exhaled shakily. They're still running tests. She collapsed at home, hit her head. They're concerned about internal bleeding, and her heart, she's weaker than we thought. For a moment, everything around us fell quiet. Even the hospital alarms felt distant. Where's Lily? I managed to ask. With one of the nurses, Victoria replied. She cried for Daniel earlier, wouldn't let go of his coat. I turned to Daniel. He didn't deny it. He only rubbed his forehead, exhausted. She was frightened, he murmured. I just tried to calm her. The words weren't wrong, but they still pierced me. How many moments had he soothed Lily instead of coming home? How many nights had he been someone else's anchor, while I waited with cold dinners and unanswered questions? Before the silence swallowed us again, a doctor approached. Family of Amelia Hayes? All 3 of us stepped forward. He looked between us, politely confused. Are you all relatives? No, Victoria said quickly. She's my sister. These 2, they're close friends. Friends. The doctor nodded and motioned us aside. She's stable for now, but her collapse was severe. Her blood pressure dropped dangerously low. She's dehydrated and malnourished. Has she mentioned eating difficulties? She barely eats when she's stressed, Victoria whispered. She's been under extreme stress, Daniel added quietly. The doctor looked at him. Are you her partner? That question cut through the air like a knife. I felt my lungs tighten. Daniel shook his head immediately. No, I'm just someone who's been helping. The doctor didn't seem fully convinced, but he continued. She'll need to stay for monitoring. We suggest keeping her niece away from the room, too distressing for a child. Victoria nodded, a trembling sound escaping her throat. Can we see her? Daniel asked. One at a time. Victoria went first. Daniel leaned against the wall again, breathing slowly, as if the act itself hurt. I stood beside him, leaving a careful, polite gap between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said softly, I didn't expect you to come. Why wouldn't I? My voice cracked more than I wanted. Because, he whispered, you have every reason to walk away from all this. From me. I stared at him. At the tiredness etched into his face, the shadows beneath his eyes. Daniel, I said quietly, you didn't trust me with any of it, but you trusted them. He flinched. I didn't trust myself, he said. Every time I tried to explain, it sounded wrong. I thought I was protecting you. But now I see. I was only protecting the mess I created. My throat burned. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to shake him. But all I felt was tired. Why didn't you tell me Mia was this unwell? I asked. Because I didn't know the extent, he admitted. And I thought, if I said too much, you'd think Victoria and I were what? I whispered. Together? He closed his eyes. Yes. Before I could respond, we heard Lily's small voice down the corridor. Daniel! She came running, curls bouncing, a nurse following behind her. She went straight into his arms, burying her face into his chest, sobbing. My heart twisted. And not because of jealousy, but because the child was terrified, clinging to the only person who felt safe. Daniel knelt, holding her gently. It's all right, Lily. Your mum will be fine. Promise? She whispered. Promise. It was tender, heart-wrenchingly tender. I looked away before it hurt too much. When Victoria finally re-emerged from the room, her face streaked with tears, Daniel lifted Lily and stood. Go in, he told me softly. She asked for you, too. I froze. Me? He nodded. I think she wants to explain something. My chest tightened again, this time with fear. Stepping into the room felt like stepping into someone else's story. Machines hummed softly. Mia lay pale against the white sheets, her breathing shallow but steady. When she saw me, she smiled weakly. Emma, she whispered, thank you for yesterday. You don't need to thank me, I replied quietly. You were unwell. She closed her eyes briefly, as if gathering strength. I know what you're thinking, she murmured, and I don't blame you. But please, don't be angry with Daniel. I didn't know what to say. She continued, voice fragile. He helped me because Victoria couldn't do everything. I've been sick for months. I didn't want anyone to know, especially not you. Why? I whispered. Because I didn't want to be the reason your marriage cracked. You see us together. You see Lily with him, and you assume the worst. I would too. I swallowed hard. There's more, she added. There's something Victoria hasn't told anyone yet. My pulse quickened. What is it? Mia looked toward the door, as if checking whether Victoria could hear. Shay's being considered for dismissal, Mia whispered. The project board is reviewing her conduct. She thinks if you knew how much she needs Daniel professionally, you'd believe the worst. My breath caught. She didn't use Daniel, Mia said firmly. And Daniel didn't hide things out of guilt. He hid them out of fear. Fear of losing you. I clenched the bed rail. Emma, she whispered, please don't let this break you two. Daniel cares more for you than he realizes how to say. My eyes stung. When I left the room, Daniel and Victoria looked up, and for the first time, I didn't see a man torn between two women. I saw a man drowning in responsibility, trying desperately to do right by everyone except himself. Before I tell you what happened that night at home, before the hotel misunderstanding surfaced again, before another message appeared and everything snapped once more, stay with me, because the storm wasn't over. It was only gathering strength. By the time Daniel and I finally returned home from the hospital, London had already folded into its evening hush. Streetlights flickered on one by one, as if the whole city were preparing for a storm it didn't know was coming. Neither of us spoke during the drive. The silence wasn't cold. It wasn't angry. It was worse. It was the silence of two people standing at opposite edges of something fragile, afraid that one wrong word would make it fall apart completely. When we walked through the front door, I hung up my coat. Daniel stood behind me, motionless. "Emma," he said softly, "please, sit. We need to talk properly." I sat on the sofa, hands clasped together. He sat opposite me, elbows on his knees, looking at the floor as though the truth might be hiding in the fibers of the carpet. "I should have told you everything months ago," he began. "About Maya's health, about helping with Lily, about Victoria's project issues. I thought I was sparing you, but I made it worse. I didn't interrupt. I wanted to hear all of it. Every detail he had kept tucked away in corners I wasn't allowed to see. And Manchester," I said quietly. His shoulders tightened. "Yes, and Manchester." For a moment he didn't look up. Then he exhaled, slow and heavy. "Emma, that trip wasn't what you think. It wasn't planned as Daniel and Victoria. The whole project team was meant to go." "That's not what I heard," I whispered. "I know," he said. "And that's because the booking was changed at the last minute. 2 engineers fell ill. The site inspection still had to happen. I went. Victoria went. 2 others were supposed to join, but their train was cancelled due to flooding on the line." "So the 2 of you were alone," I said, voice almost too soft. "Not alone," Daniel insisted. "We were with the site manager in Manchester. We had separate rooms. I swear to you, Emma, I never once stepped into hers." His sincerity hit me like a wave, but another wave followed right behind it. "Then why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because I knew how it would look," he whispered. "And I didn't want to see that look in your eyes." "The look you see now?" I asked bitterly. He closed his eyes. I leaned back, feeling exhausted. "Daniel," I murmured, "you keep saying you wanted to protect me. But what you actually protected was a version of your life where I didn't exist." He winced at that. We stayed in silence for a long moment. The kind of silence that feels like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing one of you is about to fall. Then Daniel's phone buzzed on the table. We both looked at it. A message flashed across the screen. "Thank you for last night. I couldn't have done it without you. V." My lungs froze. Daniel grabbed the phone instantly. "Emma, wait. It's not what? What exactly is it?" I demanded, voice trembling. "Because that message sounds like gratitude after spending the night together." "It's about the project report," he said quickly. She stayed up writing a formal explanation for the board. "I reviewed it online. That's all." I stared at him. "Why is she sending that message to you at 10 p.m. on a Saturday night?" "Because she's panicking, Emma. She's terrified of losing her job. And terrified enough to message my husband something like that?" Daniel looked genuinely pained. "Emma, please. You're twisting this." "No," I whispered. "Your secrecy twisted it. I'm only reading what's right in front of me." He pushed a hand through his hair, frustration and guilt ripping through him. "Do you want to see my messages?" he said. "I'll show you everything, right now." I swallowed hard. "No, that's not the point anymore." He froze. "The point," I continued quietly, "is that you didn't tell me the truth when you had the chance. You let me walk blind into a life you were already living." Daniel sat down beside me, slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. "Emma," he whispered, I love you. Not Victoria. Not anyone else. You. The words hit me, but instead of warmth, they brought tears. Because love wasn't the wound. Secrecy was. Before I could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. My heart dropped. Daniel frowned. It's nearly 10. Who? He opened the door. Lily stood there in her pajamas, clutching her toy rabbit, eyes red from crying. Behind her was Victoria, breathless. Daniel. I'm sorry, she said quickly. Mia is asking for you. She woke up disoriented and keeps calling your name. They said only someone she recognizes might calm her. Daniel hesitated, looked back at me, then at Lily, clinging to his leg. I felt something crack. He turned to me, whispering, Emma, I have to go. Of course he had to go. I wasn't heartless, but the truth stung like fire. He wasn't choosing between women. He was choosing between responsibilities. And I had never been part of that world he felt responsible for. Go, I said quietly. I understand. He searched my face as though afraid of what he might see. Please stay awake when I get back. I can't leave things like this. But when the door closed behind him, I didn't feel understanding. I felt alone. More alone than I'd felt in years. I stood in the hallway, watching the night swallow his figure through the glass. The ache in my chest tightened until it felt like something might break clean in two, and before I could even go upstairs, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message, unknown number. I opened it. It was a photo. A hotel invoice, Manchester City Suites, room 407. Guest, Daniel Clarke. Additional guest, V. Hayes. Duration, 1 night. And a message beneath it. Thought you should know. My hands began to shake. Someone wanted me to see this. Someone wanted this marriage to burn. Before I tell you what happened next, before Daniel returned home, before I discovered who sent that message, stay with me, because this was the moment the ground truly gave way beneath my feet. I stared at the hotel invoice on my screen long enough for the edges of the image to blur. My own reflection stared back at me in the black glass beneath it, eyes wide, breath shallow, as if I had been pushed underwater without warning. Someone wanted me to see this. Someone wanted me to believe the worst. And the truth, the awful, humiliating truth, was that it didn't take much to convince me. I sank onto the bottom step of the staircase, phone still glowing in my hand. The house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like a prelude to heartbreak. Manchester City Suites, room 407. Guest, Daniel Clarke. Additional guest, V. Hayes. Not a rumour, not a screenshot of messages. A printed invoice. Evidence. Unless it was fabricated. For a moment, I clung desperately to that possibility. But another voice, the one born from weeks of doubt, whispered that maybe this was simply the truth finally showing its face. My fingers trembled as I zoomed in on the date. It matched his trip. Of course it did. I let out a shaky breath, then stood, pacing the hallway. My heart raced so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I needed air. I walked to the kitchen, turned on the cold tap, splashed water on my face, hoping the sting would pull me back to myself. But the panic only settled deeper. The message had no sender name, just a number I didn't recognize. I typed back, hands cold. Who is this? The message delivered. No reply. How did you get my number? Delivered. Still nothing. I felt sick. A third message appeared. Hez not being honest with you. My breath hitched. I typed again. What do you want? No answer. Instead, there was silence, the kind that presses on your chest like a weight. And then something even worse occurred to me. What if this person hadn't sent only this to me? What if someone else, Victoria, Mia, someone at Daniel's office was feeding this fire from another direction as well? But why? What did they gain by tearing my marriage to shreds? I needed to speak to someone outside this mess. I almost called my mother but stopped. She'd hear my voice and panic, and I wasn't ready to explain something I didn't understand myself. So I called Leah, my closest friend since university. She picked up on the second ring. "Emma, it's late. What's wrong?" My throat closed. But I forced the words out. No. I don't know what I think. Someone just sent me proof of Daniel with Victoria at a hotel. Silence. Then Leah said sharply, "What kind of proof?" "A hotel invoice, room under his name, her listed as an additional guest." "Send it to me." I forwarded the image. 30 seconds passed. Then she said, "Okay. First, breathe. Second, this could be fake. This is too convenient, too perfectly timed. But what if it isn't?" I whispered. "Emma, has Daniel ever lied to you?" I closed my eyes. "Not until recently." "Recently meaning?" "Meaning, I don't even know anymore." She sighed softly. "You need to talk to him when he gets home. But you cannot assume the worst before he walks through the door. This feels like someone is trying to engineer your reaction. Who would do that? Anyone with a motive," she said. "A jealous colleague, a project rival, someone who doesn't want Victoria to lose her job, someone who wants Daniel distracted. Emma, this smells like office politics." I hadn't even considered that. Leah continued, "And the number, did you look it up?" I hadn't. Hands shaking, I copied the number into a search engine. Nothing. No website, no business, no person. Leah exhaled again. "Emma, it's probably a burner number. Someone doesn't want to be traced." A cold chill ran through me. "Why would anyone do that to me?" She spoke quietly now. "Because they know sending this to you is the fastest way to destabilize him. Destabilize Daniel." The idea made me dizzy. Could this really be a sabotage? A targeted attempt to destroy his credibility by destroying his marriage? "Emma," Leah said firmly, "promise me you won't explode when he comes home. Ask him calmly. Give him a chance to explain." "I'll try," I whispered. But my heart was a storm. After I hung up, I paced the living room again. The clock ticked. Minutes dragged. I checked the driveway every few seconds, waiting for the shape of his car to appear. But the longer he stayed away, the louder the doubts became. What if Victoria needed more than comfort? What if he was in her flat right now, helping with Lily, holding her while she cried? What if this wasn't sabotage at all? What if this was simply the proof of what everyone else had already known? By the time I heard his key in the door, my heart felt bruised from beating too hard. Daniel stepped inside, exhausted, tie loosened, hair messy, eyes tired in a way that made my stomach drop. But he didn't speak first. I did. "Daniel," I said quietly, holding the phone in my hand. "Someone sent me this." I handed it to him. He looked at the screen, paused. His face drained all color. "Emma, this is not what it looks like." "It's your name," I said. "Your room, her listed as a guest." "Emma, listen to me. Tell me the truth, Daniel. Please." He took a breath, gripping the edge of the table. "This is the hotel we stayed in for the inspection." "Yes." "But Emma, she wasn't in my room. I swear to you, she had her own. This invoice. This isn't how the hotel billed us. Then how do you explain it?" "I can't," he whispered. "Can't or won't?" He pressed his palms to his forehead. "Emma, someone is doing this deliberately. This invoice is altered. I never authorized a second guest on my booking. This is not real." "Then why did someone send it to me?" I demanded. "I don't know." His voice cracked, not in anger but fear. Something in me trembled. "Emma, please, you have to believe me. I would never do that to you." I looked into his eyes, searching for the truth, the real truth, beneath all the chaos, and then a cold, devastating thought hit me. If this invoice was fake, that meant someone had access to Daniel's work details, his travel schedule, his marriage, someone close. Before I could ask anything else, another buzz rang out. My phone. A second message, from the same unknown number, this time just 4 words. "Ask him about Thursday." My stomach twisted. Thursday. The day he'd come home late without explanation. The day I had smelled perfume on his coat that wasn't mine. I looked at Daniel. His expression froze when he saw my face change. "What now?" he whispered. I showed him the screen. He took a step back, as though the message had physically struck him. "Emma." I don't know what they're talking about, but doubt wrapped its fingers around my ribs again. Before I tell you what Thursday really meant, before the truth finally pushed its way to the surface, before I learned who had been pulling the strings all along, stay with me, because the person behind these messages was closer than I ever imagined. If the days leading up to it had cracked me open slowly, then that night was the moment the entire fault line split. That message, "Ask him about Thursday," hung in the air like a blade suspended by a single strand of thread. I looked at Daniel. He stood a few feet away, shoulders tense, like a man preparing to face a verdict he didn't know how to survive. "What happened on Thursday?" My voice barely made it out. "Emma, I told you already. I don't know who's sending Daniel." I cut him off, each word deliberate. "Tell me what happened that night. You came home late. Your coat smelled of a perfume that wasn't mine. Your phone was off." He shut his eyes for a moment, breathing like someone bracing for surgery. "I was at the hospital." I froze. "The hospital? Why?" Daniel leaned a hand on the counter, head bowing as if the truth itself weighed too much. "Amelia collapsed while taking Lily to an appointment. Victoria was at a site inspection. There was no one else who could get them to A&E quickly. I stayed with Lily while Mia was admitted." A memory flashed across my mind. Mia sitting in my bakery, pale, trembling, exhausted. Yes, she truly was unwell. I swallowed. And the perfume? Lily sat in my lap for nearly an hour. She kept pulling at a nurse's scarf. That smell wasn't Victoria's. It was hospital staff. The explanation made sense. It made perfect sense. But when distrust has already settled into the bone, even the truth sounds like a lie wearing a borrowed coat. Daniel's phone buzzed. A soft vibration, barely audible, yet it hit me like gunfire. He glanced at the screen. My stomach twisted. Same number. Same ghostly sender. New message. "You should tell her before someone else does." I felt the blood drain from my face. Daniel whispered, "Emma, that's not me. I swear." I forced myself to breathe. "Then who is trying to destroy us?" Daniel looked shaken, hands gripping the edge of the table. "Emma, someone knows far too much. They know my schedule. They know you're the quickest way to hurt me." A cold thought slid into my mind. Hurt? Or being watched? His eyes widened. "What are you saying?" "Daniel, does anyone at your company have my number?" "No, of course not." He paused. "Well, senior management has emergency contact lists, and Victoria, because of Lily. But none of them would." He stopped. The colour drained from his face. "What?" I demanded. "There is one person who might exploit this." "Who?" "Leonard." I recognized the name instantly. Regional Director. The man who resented Daniel's position on the Riverside project. What does he have to do with this? Daniel walked a few steps, as if piecing together a puzzle he'd been trying to ignore. "Has been furious since I brought Victoria onto the project. She's the best architect we have, and it made his department look incompetent. Hes wanted me out for months." My pulse thudded loudly in my ears. "So he'd sabotage your marriage? Emma, if I fall apart, the project falls apart. And then Leonard gets exactly what he wants." The room felt smaller. The rain outside rapped on the windows like fingernails. "Daniel." My voice trembled. This is insane." "I know. But think, who has access to hotel itineraries, work, travel details, internal files? Who knows about you, about us?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "But Daniel, why didn't you tell me any of this from the beginning?" His face twisted with something like regret. "Because I was afraid. Afraid you couldn't handle the stress. Afraid you'd think Victoria and I were reconnecting. Afraid you'd leave. Something inside me stung sharply. You thought I was that fragile? He looked up slowly. No, I thought you were too important to risk losing. The words hit harder than any accusation. I turned away, not because I wanted to leave, but because tears came too fast to hide. I leaned against the sink, breathing hard. Behind me, Daniel said softly. Emma. I'll find who's behind this. I promise. I wiped my eyes, faced him again. No. We'll find them. He stared at me, surprised. We? Yes. If someone wants to break this marriage apart, they can deal with both of us together. Something eased in his expression, a release of fear long held too tightly. He stepped closer, took my hand gently. But before I could speak, the doorbell rang. A sharp, urgent sound. Daniel frowned. Who would come at this hour? I peeked through the curtain. A black umbrella. A slim figure standing in the rain. She lifted her face slightly. My heart lurched. Victoria, but not the poised, immaculate architect I had seen before. Her face was grey with worry, her eyes wide, red-rimmed. Rain and tears mixed indistinguishably. When Daniel opened the door, she said in a shaking voice, Emma, Daniel, something terrible has happened. It's about Mia, and about the person who's been messaging Emma. Daniel and I exchanged a rigid glance. Victoria's voice cracked. You need to hear it now, before everything gets even worse. Victoria stood in our doorway, rain sliding down her face, but the fear in her eyes was so much sharper than the weather outside. Emma, Daniel, we don't have much time, she said, her voice unsteady. It's Mia, and it's about the person who has been messaging you. We brought her in from the cold. Victoria wrapped her coat tighter around herself, as if trying to hold her entire world together. Mia rang me, she continued, breathless. She received threatening messages tonight. Someone told her that Daniel would lose his position on the Riverside project if she didn't stop relying on him. She panicked and called me in tears. Daniel stepped forward. Who would threaten Mia? Victoria looked straight at him, the answer trembling on her lips. Leonard. It was Leonard. He approached her at the hospital, told her you were struggling, and implied that if she spoke about it, you would pay the price. He wanted her frightened and silent. The room seemed to tilt. I gasped, without meaning to. Mia, frail, exhausted, carrying her daughter on sheer will alone, had been dragged into someone else's ambition. And all while I had been drowning in my own suspicions, Daniel whispered, almost to himself. He used my wife, and your sister, against me. Victoria nodded, her expression tight with anger. He wanted you off the project. He wanted me out too. The fastest way was to tear your personal life apart. If he destabilized you, he destabilized everything. Every message, every doubt, every shadow on my marriage. None of it had come from the people I feared. Daniel turned to me then, and in that moment he wasn't a director or a negotiator or a man under pressure. He was my husband, a man frighteningly aware of what his silence had cost me. Emma, he said quietly, I am so sorry. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I thought hiding it would protect you, but all I did was leave you alone with fears you never deserved. His voice cracked, not with guilt alone, but with the weight of finally understanding how deeply his secrecy had cut. I took a breath, steady but honest. Daniel, I never needed you to shield me. I just needed you to trust me. If something is frightening, I want to face it with you, not be shut out of it. He stepped closer, almost cautiously, as if unsure whether he deserved to. I promise you, Emma, no more silence, no more half-truths. From now on, whatever storms come, we face them together. Victoria spoke again, firmer this time. I've already contacted the senior board. Mia will confirm everything. Leonard won't be able to bury this. Daniel, you'll be cleared. For the first time in weeks, I watched my husband release a breath that seemed to come from the depths of him. A breath of someone who had been holding the world on his shoulders and had finally put it down. I looked at both of them. Victoria drenched from the rain, Daniel still trembling, the house filled with the remnants of fear and misunderstanding, and I knew what had to come next. "Tomorrow," I said softly. "We go to Mia. Together. She shouldn't carry this alone. None of us should." Daniel nodded, eyes shining with relief and remorse. And in that moment, I realized something I had lost sight of in the chaos. The storm hadn't passed because we uncovered the truth. It passed because we had finally chosen to stand on the same side of it. Outside, London rain tapped against the windows, but for the first time in a long time, I felt something warm settle in my chest. Not certainty, not perfection, but peace. Because love doesn't survive by avoiding the truth. It survives by having the courage to face it together.